Okay, we're here at Pennsylvania College, also known today as Gettysburg College, and we're looking at the old dorm here. This dorm, during the Battle of Gettysburg on July 1st, 1863, came into play when Confederate General Robert Edward Lee ascended to the cupola of this dorm to watch the battle and overlook the entire battlefield to draw plans for what he would then use on July 2nd and July 3rd, 1863. As the Confederate Army pushed the 1st and 11th Corps from their positions back toward Cemetery Hill, the 11th Corps pushed back through the college and toward our camera, the 1st Corps from the west being pushed back into the town this way. The Confederates overran the college campus. This then became a field hospital here at Gettysburg and held at one time over 900 Confederate prisoners. As these soldiers lying, suffering, dying, maimed, inside of the campus, all floors filled with wounded and dying men. Surgeons and volunteers. Mrs. Goldborough from Baltimore came almost as a Confederate spy and gave boots to a Confederate colonel, which was forbidden at that time. This was one of the largest field hospitals until Camp Letterman was established later in July of 1863. However, because it was so large, the patients that were here stayed here until August. Now, after the Battle of Gettysburg and beyond, for years, shell fragments, bullets, different pieces of swords and all kinds of battle debris stayed around this building and on the campus here for years afterwards. And as different college projects were done, buildings built, roads dug, these items would turn up for years and years and years, including in some cases remains of Confederate soldiers who were buried here on the premises. So this building here, this is the old dorm building of Pennsylvania College. The cupola was used by General Robert E. Lee on July 1st, 1863 to get a first look at the overview of the battlefield, and also which would then come into play in him planning days 2 and day 3 of the Battle of Gettysburg. This has been Pennsylvania College Part 1 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. White House of the Gettysburg College complex, also known as the President's House, and this was one of 3 original buildings that was here during the Battle of Gettysburg. It sits just in the distance from the old dorm of Pennsylvania College. When Confederate troops occupied the campus here on July 1st of 1863, the president of the college, Dr. Bauer, and his entire family found themselves in Confederate territory. Even though they risked imprisonment to harbor the wounded soldiers of the Federal Army in their home on the campus, which was known at that time as the White House. Despite repeated searches, the soldiers went undetected. Now, one of the men in President Bowker's care was Private George Kimball of the 12th Massachusetts. He later praised the family, especially the daughter of the president, Alice Bauer. Though shells were frequently bursting all throughout the grounds, the fragments crashing against the walls of this building and tearing limbs from nearby trees, Alice did not take any pause in her work or risk any danger to take care of this soldier, Private George Kimball. Now, other faculty members risked dangers as well to help all the wounded soldiers. From their home, which was on the town square, Professor Martin Stover and his family fed hungry soldiers out of their backyard and sheltered wounded men from the Federal Army in their dining room. Also, Professor Charles Schaefer cared for a soldier named Frederick Lehman, or a student named Frederick Lehman, rather, who was wounded outside of the Schaefer home on Chambersburg Street. Now, of course, the Gettysburg battle turned homes and colleges and uh, churches into hospitals, and it turned civilians into medical personnel who would assist surgeons. It would take the town and the college months to recover from the damage that was inflicted during July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1863. Later on, the faculty said that they would be willing to suffer the same thing over again for the same cause. Now, we did a video earlier this year on the Michael Jacobs house. Now, he provided one of the first eyewitness accounts of the Battle of Gettysburg, and he monitored the battle from his home, which we did our video on at 101 West Middle Street. And he took notes, he took weather reports, and that's how we know what temperature it was here during the battle. He wrote the very first book on the Battle of Gettysburg called The Rebel Invasion of Maryland and Pennsylvania into Gettysburg, which is basically the first book that was ever written on the Battle of Gettysburg. So Professor Jacobs, who was a professor of mathematics and science, acted as a reporter and a historian. This house here, again called the White House, which is also known as the President's House, was one of 3 buildings that existed here during the Battle of Gettysburg. This has been Pennsylvania College, Part 2, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Pennsylvania College Part 3 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. As we look here at the President's house, you'll see a red flag that's hanging right here from the porch. And now we're going to walk over toward the old dorm of Pennsylvania College, which in Part 1 we learned was part of a field hospital. And you're also going to see a red flag hanging right from the middle of the building on the staircase right here. Okay, the reason for the red flag was during the Battle of Gettysburg, after the Battle of Gettysburg rather, as these buildings became field hospitals, the surgeons inside and local residents throughout the town would hang red material from their homes and buildings to identify these buildings and homes as field hospitals. That way they wouldn't be ransacked, that way they wouldn't be fired on during the battle. These were areas of peace. These were areas where there was a truce, there was no fighting. We were not supposed to show unfair treatment toward one side or the other. It was a safe haven. So when you see the red flag hanging from a building here in Gettysburg, that depicts that building as a field hospital. And for the 150th Gettysburg anniversary, all throughout the town, you're starting to see these red flags pop up, which is really nice. I hope they stay, but if they don't, this is a rare look at this as it happens here at the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg here in 2013. This has been Part 3 of Pennsylvania College on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Pennsylvania Hall Old Dorm, and this is where Union signal officers on the evening and day of June the 30th, 1863, came up to observe the battlefield. Also on July 1st, 1863, Professor Michael Jacobs here of this college led Union officers up here to observe the battle. And then as the Union lines of the 1st and 11th Corps were driven through the college into the town of Gettysburg, General Robert Edward Lee came up here to observe the battle and also plan his second and third day's attacks. The view is absolutely amazing, as you can see over here, the town of Gettysburg. And then in the distance here you got the cupola of the Lutheran Theological Seminary, in which John Buford observed the battle early on the morning of July 1st. And then in the distance over here, you have Oak Hill the Eternal Light Peace Memorial. And then to the north of town here, where the entire 11th Corps under Otis Oliver Howard, again being pushed back in this direction toward the college, and this being one of a couple buildings here on the campus. Today, American flag flies lit up day and night, and this building could be observed from pretty much anywhere from the town of Gettysburg.
See the stars on the flag? I think there's only 6 places in the country that fly that flag.
Oh yeah, it's a Civil War flag. It's one of few places in the entire country that can still fly that flag. That's pretty awesome. Hi, this is Frank from Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, and I'm standing here in front of the old dorm here at Pennsylvania College. And just about 25 minutes ago, I had the extremely rare opportunity to ascend up to the top into the cupola, and then on top of the cupola where you see the American flag flying. I'm still moved by what I experienced there. Um, as a person that has a grand appreciation for history, I realize that very few individuals ever have or will have the opportunity to do what I did, and I'm very grateful for it. Going up there, as I climbed into the smaller area underneath the platform, seeing the original woodwork and carvings in there that were done by late 1800s, early 1900s visitors, even up to the present day, realizing that people that did go there knew where they were walking and they wanted to inscribe something. And I did take some pictures of that. But while standing up there, I was nearly speechless and stumbling for words, shaken, literally shaken, because I realized that, just the day before the Battle of Gettysburg, signal officers were up in that very cupola, and they were watching westward as Confederate columns approached. Very early in the morning, as the battle began, Federal officers, and quite possibly Oliver Howard, but we don't know that for sure, but Federal officers stood in that very cupola, ascended those very steps, and began to watch the Battle of Gettysburg live. Professor Michael Jacobs, um, who wrote the earliest book on the Battle of Gettysburg and was an eyewitness of the actual battle, was up there, most likely with some of those Federal officers, giving them, the go-abouts about the land and his ideas of what the land layout was like and what may be going on. But most of all, Confederate general, and probably the greatest military general of all time, Robert Edward Lee, ascended those very stairs, which I touched with my hands, and the railings, and stood up there and watched after his Confederate troops pushed the 1st and 11th Corps back through the town. Probably watched the battle live himself, and then of course most likely got a great first lay of the land of what the Gettysburg area looked like, so that he could then, go to places like the Daniel Lady Farm and such on the 2nd and 3rd and plan the 2nd and 3rd days battle. And probably what he's seen up there in that very cupola here on July 1st, 1863, stuck in his mind so that he could, plan his plan of attack. And going up in those steps into that cupola and up on top of that cupola where General Robert E. Lee stood is a very moving experience. It's something that not many people ever get to do, and I got to do it today, and I tried to do what I could to bring that back to Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook so I could share it with everyone. And I hope you enjoyed the video. This will conclude my videos on the Pennsylvania College. And we did the old dorm, we did the President's House, we did the video on the red flags being used as it was used for a hospital, and then of course today ending with going and me taking you to the top of the cupola of the old dorm. And I did previous videos on the Rebecca Eyster School, which was part of the college campus at the time. So that will conclude our Pennsylvania College Day. I hope you guys all enjoyed them. And be sure to check out the pictures in the Pennsylvania College folder of Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Thank you. All Conley House here at 444 Harrisburg Pike in Gettysburg. This house was built in 1834, and it has more of like a southern plantation mansions look to it. It was the resident that was here during the battle was Henry Balher, and he was this house was used for the president of Pennsylvania College, which is today Gettysburg College. So Henry Balher was the first resident of the president's house. Later on, this house went into the family of the Donleys, and Jane Donley owned it, and she finally, in the mid-1900s, donated this house to the college. But this is a Civil War building, and of course it was the witness of the July 1st, 1863 attack of the Confederates as they beat back the 11th Corps troops from this direction toward our camera. And you can go back and watch the video series. I did a 5-part video series on the battle for Northeast Gettysburg just 2 or 3 days ago in 5 parts. And I talk about the troops as they lined up just about right here beyond the yard of the Balner-Donley house here. So this has been the Balner-Donley house at 444 Harrisburg Pike on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.